Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to today's broadcast. It's the Monday, July 20th, 2026 episode of the Marco Dre Show, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Another start to yet another week here on the program. Before we get into our news articles for today, I want to expand on where our political issues lie in this nation, where I see a lot of our problems continue to get worse and worse, and yet nobody really seems to care except myself and a few group of other people. You know, while most people were out watching the FIFA World Cup, I was listening to various different geopolitical analysts really discussing the precipice of chaos of which our nation's economy and our military are now facing. But I had a funny thought. I said to myself, I'm seeing these posts online. People are at bars, they're at house parties, watch parties on the beach, and even the event itself had, I think, 80,000 people showing up to watch Spain and Argentina play soccer. And God knows how many millions of people nationwide were watching this. Again, I never watched 1 minute of this. I really don't care, which is fine, by the way. And by the way, if you like it too, that's fine too. But sometimes, you need that release from our daily lives, and watching sports really tends to alleviate a lot of that stress, which is great. And if you like it, good, I'm glad. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But can you imagine if this many people paid this close attention to our current events and held our government leaders at the local, state, and federal level accountable? If we had millions of people in the street demanding change in this country, like we see after one of these professional sports teams wins, usually it's to vandalize private and public property, which really seems kind of low IQ to me. Doesn't it seem that way to you? Your sports teams wins in the city of which you're a part of, and yet you decide to go out and destroy everything. I don't know anyone that would want to do that. Thank God. Seems pretty stupid to me, folks. But really, when I think about it, if we went to City Hall, if we had state capitol houses, D.C. itself, with people flooded in demand for an end to this garbage that is our laws and our policies, of which neglect our rights, I think we'd be doing pretty well, don't you? By the way, these laws, currently, lots of them, none of which the people have asked for. Did anyone listening write to their congressman, their congresswoman, or their Congress-it? I'm trying to be inclusive today. For these new flock cameras to usher in the new digital police state, did anyone do that? Watching your every move? When you have a right to privacy in our Fourth Amendment? Did anyone call and ask their senators anything like that? Well, I didn't think you did, too. How about for the Trump tariffs? Did anyone call and ask about that this year or last year? We now have a tax on your consumer power now in this country, or lack thereof, which is now helping to rise core inflation and go well beyond our means when you buy at the store? No, I didn't think you did you? Did anybody listening call the Trump administration and ask for us to be in this war with Iran, or to, quote unquote, go and finish the job? I keep hearing that all the time now. I see it all over social media. Finish the job. Finish the job. What job? What the hell are you talking about? Now, I'd make $1 million bet my wonderful audience would say no to that. Nobody asked for this war. Nobody wants this war. And you find it equally appalling as I do. Now, we had 3 service members killed in action over the weekend, which I find disgraceful, to be honest with you. 2 have been identified as First Lieutenant Tyler James Feehan, 25, of Hawaii, and Private Isabella Gonzalez, 19, of Carrollton, Texas. This is according to DropSite News. And I was a little bit privy to some information also over the weekend that 5 service members in Jordan arrived on medevac and are likely not to survive from their injuries. Now, I pray to God I'm wrong about this, but this is just the information that I've been relayed to. And I say 3 because I was told probably more than likely one was said to have been missing. I believe they have now determined that whomever it was also killed in the attack. My prayers obviously go out to all those families grieving the loss of their loved one, especially at this time. And I encourage you all to pray, and please do the same as well. Please pray that our military service members come home safely where they belong. This war's got to stop, my friends. And you know I was opposed to this war before it even began. But these deaths of these young, brave Americans happened because the United States government decided to resume this war, to abandon diplomacy. Now, I say enough is enough. Send our troops home. But that tends to fall on deaf ears as of late, unfortunately. What we should be protesting is this war in Iran, this war in Ukraine, an end to the wars Israel is waging on our tax dollars in Gaza, the West Bank, and in Lebanon alike, and the immense suffering on all these regions, on all sides, by the way, that go along with it. This is what we should be protesting. Protesting our tax dollars being used anywhere but inside of our own country. Also, the end of involving ourselves in what goes on inside other nations' borders, and really focus on our own borders and our own nation for once. When are people going to say enough is enough? I got to be honest with you. We're not seeing it by the majority just yet, even though a bulk of the country does not agree with this war with Iran. And by the way, anyone calling me or anybody else an isolationist, I guess if I'm not gung-ho for this illegal war with Iran, of which we cannot win, and I don't say that to undermine our military. We have a great military presence, a great military strength. We have great members of our military, great leaders in our military. That's not the point. The way we're fighting this war, it cannot be won. But what a dumb and baseless statement to make to somebody who doesn't want to see our young men and women go to war. But here's what I say to you that feel this way. I say, okay, take your money, take your sons and daughters and go fight. What's stopping any of you from doing that? That way you aren't so isolated from the rest of the world. Why send someone else's children to fight in your stead when you can go do it yourself? You seem to believe in the cause, don't you? So what's stopping you from doing this, Mr. or Mrs. Isolationist, or anti-isolationist, I should say? It's all a bluff, folks. And, you know, that's like saying to those of us on the right who want to secure our borders, to put a memorandum of a moratorium, on immigration until we can sort things out with the pervasive amount of illegal aliens and expired visa holders here inside the United States. That would be like some dimwit on CNN calling us an isolationist, right? Right? Yeah, that's akin to the same thing. It's just stupid. And as if to make matters worse, right now we're entering a period of bottlenecking with the oil industry and refining of heavy crude oil right here in the United States because we don't have access to it. Now, globally, we will really soon see what's been coined now as an oil shock. And as things heat up with this war in Iran, as we'll discuss a little bit later in the program, the longer this war goes on, the greater that shock is going to be. The greater that inflation is going to be, and the greater that global recession is going to be, unfortunately. I only tell you the truth. The facts are the facts, folks. I tell you how it is, not what I wish it will be. But this war is a big problem for us. Now, last Thursday, as you know, President Trump went on a fairly long tirade about China stealing our elections and voting information of some 220 million Americans, which I find interesting, by the way, because I came to find out earlier today that there's only about 189 million registered voters in this country, which unless, I guess, if you're doing Obama Common Core math, this really doesn't make any sense. How could they steal 220 million Americans' voter information if we only have 189 million registered voters? Well, I don't know how that works out personally. You'll have to find a Democrat to answer that for you. But since Thursday, I have yet to see anybody inside our government accused of colluding with the Chinese arrested. Certainly no indictment. So what are we to make of all this? What was the whole purpose of all that? Now, he named China, but he didn't give us any really hard data to really suggest of what was going on or how they changed one vote. What are we to make of all this? And by the way, I'm not suggesting for one moment that there was no election fraud. We know that there is. But where does China come into play with all this? Really? I really want to know, where is this damning information right now? Why has no one been arrested for rigging and stealing a presidential election? I'll let you ponder that one yourself. This is the wrong time to pick a fight with China, too, by the way. China, who produces much of what we need here in the country, including refining our rare earth minerals, which we do not do, which we desperately need, especially for our military weaponry and our stockpiles. Ladies and gentlemen, right now, and by the way, you're not hearing this anywhere else, we are running on a shortage of our PAC-3s, our THAAD missiles. These are our defensive capabilities. On the offensive wing, we need more HIMARS, we need more Patriot missiles, we need more JASSMs, PRMs, ATACMs, Harpoons, Tomahawk missiles. The amount of Tomahawks we have remaining is about 2,000 missiles. And I just want to say this to you. It takes roughly 2 years just to build one. So it's a slow process. This is not good. And this is true, by the way, of other types of missiles that we purchase today. It'll take several years just to make them. So when we start making today, we get 2 years from now. That's 2028. Aren't you so glad that we sell all of our arms to other countries, folks? When President Trump said Iran had about 20 to 21% of their overall stockpile capacity, I think he was reading our inventory list himself by mistake. I don't know. I don't know what to make of this. I don't know what the plan is. I really don't. We need China because we rely on them heavily for their manufacturing, right? I mean, here in the United States, we need it. And by the way, I was listening to Edward Dowd over the weekend, and like ours, he was saying that the Chinese economy is getting hit with real estate issues, real estate bubbles, right? We're seeing that here in the United States as well. They have a big demographic shift when they had 150 million Chinese retire, in just a given year, by the way, and they're spending less, and the younger generation cannot keep up with that same level of spending inside their country. This is why I have spent so much time saying to you that the U.S. needs to reinvest in manufacturing. We have to do it. Now, this takes the time. This does take a lot of time. I'm not saying it doesn't. But we need to start the process. We haven't seen one dime of any of these countries that pledged the alleged $18 to $21 trillion to the United States break ground yet. This is something we need to get started, folks. This is what we have to start doing. And this is how we avoid shortages and supply chain issues alike, because we produce. We don't have to rely just on one country like we do with China for so many different things. But China's GDP is dropping right now as well. That's another major problem. And President Trump right now is set out to vilify them with no hard data. It just doesn't help our situation. Push the SAVE Act, yes. Make it necessary that we pass it, of course. Obviously, yes. We need free and fair elections. But we need to work with China right now, not to take up a fight with them. For all the reasons I just said to you, of course, the manufacturing, industrials, we need it. We need it. We need to have it. And especially the rare earths. Absolutely 100%. We don't have a military without China. So think about that right now. Think about how that could work out if they put that cog in our wheel. And I don't think anybody would think that's positive. And I just want to take the moment to once again thank Billy Clinton for getting China into the World Trade Organization back in 2001. That worked out really well for us, didn't it, America? I think otherwise. I really do. Now let's look at what's happening with the SAVE Act that President Trump was propping up on Thursday evening. This comes from The Hill, and it says here that GOP fears over shutdown collide with the Save America Act battle. This is where we are, folks. This is where we are. Senate conservatives have now allied with President Trump, are now open to attaching the president's top legislative priority, the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, known as the SAVE Act, to a stopgap measure funding the government past September 30th. But it's getting strong pushback even from the GOP colleagues inside the Senate. So, you know, we have people like Ron Johnson, who is obviously one of several Trump allies inside the U.S. Senate, open to attaching the Save America Act to a short-term government spending measure. Here's the problem, though. You got to get Democrats on the side, and they're not likely to take up the action to do so. That's the problem. Now, Johnson has come out in support of the filibuster to get this passed. I don't like this procedural methodology because then if, for instance, the Democrats take power this November, they win the House and the Senate, they can also go and do the same thing. They can do away with the filibuster themselves. Remember, it's just a procedural measure inside of the Senate. That's what it comes down to. So if we want to reinstate it, it's got to be internal through the Senate rulemaking itself, only if you have a majority of senators in order to do so. So let's say we took it off for the moment and then we decided to try and get it back on. You still need all 53 Republicans in order to do so. I don't even think you have the votes to do that, to be honest with you. So that's why I'm not for scrapping it right now. This is one of the safeguards we have in the Senate so that we don't have the Democrats ramming through awful legislation right now. I don't think anybody would want that, to be honest with you. We need to find a way to get this passed, though. This is the key. So it's not going to work with the NDAA. That's simply out of the question. The Democrats have already rejected it. Despite 80% of Americans, both Democrat, Independent, and Republican alike, wanting this legislation passed. We want free and fair elections in our country. Any sane person would. So that begs the question, how do we get this passed? What can we do in order to get this passed? Now, some of you are asking yourself, well, Gerace, why would the Democrats then want it if the majority of their constituents more than likely would like this to be passed? Ladies and gentlemen, because this is how they get in office. And by the way, I'm not naive. I'm sure Republicans utilize this as well. You'll recall I played for you Alyssa Slotkin not too long ago. And she had some brilliant words herself, like this on clip one. Take a listen.
The other thing that we blocked yesterday was the SAVE Act, right? Which was literally allow this administration to rig our democracy so that it would be hard for any Democrat in any state to win any election.
Now, why would that be? You have a Democratic senator saying it would be difficult for any Democrat to win in any state election. Ladies and gentlemen, I mean, she's saying the quiet part out loud, of course. But there is obviously much rigging going on in these elections, federal, state, and local. Look no further than the mayoral race that was stolen from Spencer Pratt right in front of your eyes. And you're told just to go along with it, right? You're told, Gerace, you don't really have definitive evidence. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know any race of which you can be the second in place to the front runner, the incumbent, by a couple percentage points, have a bulk of 25,000 votes come in the middle of the night, and not one be for that candidate. And yet the candidate that was so far behind the second place candidate, that would be Spencer Pratt, I don't even know her name. And to tell you the truth, I don't want to know her name. She sits on the city council. She's a do-nothing nobody. But they got her through. That's what it comes down to. You have two idiots now vying to be the next mayor of LA again. And what's been done with LA, folks? Absolutely nothing. Nothing's been fixed in LA. So what makes anybody think anyone would want to keep either of these two ignoramuses in power? It is beyond me. But you got to look at what's going on. You got to look at the anomalies in these races. Does it even make any sense? Does it make even statistical sense that someone who's in second place, who's maybe a couple percentage points behind the incumbent, who's gaining power, excuse me, not power, but gaining momentum in the race, have a ballot dump of 25,000 and gain none? Zero. He got zero. Even the no-names in the race that nobody can even name got some votes in that 25,000. Again, folks, it just is clear as mud. It's as clear as mud. They stole it in the evening. That's what it comes down to. Sound familiar, folks? I think it does. This is why we need free and fair elections. You don't have to show any voter ID when you go vote in California. You don't have to show anything. You can go and say, hi, I'm Marco Gerace. I'm here to vote. Boom, there you go. No, just sign your name here. We're not going to check it, but you sign your name there and you'll be on your way. Go vote, sir. Go vote. Yeah. They made it illegal in California, so you can't even show your ID to vote. That's how ridiculous voting in California is. And by the way, if you don't think that causes the ability to have fraud, I don't know what else I can tell you. Again, if you don't believe that, I've got a great bridge I can sell you in Brooklyn. Very cheap too, by the way. Very, very cheap. I can sell it to you very good. Anyways, here's the problem. Trump needs to make a motion in order to create the necessity to have this, where Democrat, Independent, and Republican alike would sit there and go, I can't deny this. And the only way you do that is if you have a forensic audit of the electronic voting machines which are used in a state like California. So I think what he should do, and I don't know why there's nobody on his staff that would think of this. I really don't. This should have been day one too, by the way. What he can do, President Trump can do this. He can have the DOJ get these electronic voting machines from, let's just say, LA County in California. Just pick a county. Just pick LA County. Go through the federal results for the federal races, for the congressional seats, and you could basically go through and do a forensic audit of these. And what you will find, I'm sure as I'm sitting here talking to you right now, you will find lots of fraud. Because again, if you take out the SIM card or the memory card or whatever the hell it's called, you could see if somebody has rigged the results. And we've heard computer programmers, I'm not going to play for you on the show today. We've heard from various computer programmers testifying in front of Congress. Hi, I'm a computer programmer. I work for X, Y, and Z. I can tell you right now, anybody can come in and change the results of this election, make it 51-49, make it 52-48, whatever they want it to be. And as a result, they can rig these races. And the only way you would know is if you did a forensic audit yourself. You wouldn't know just by looking at the ballots. Now, I'm sure looking at the ballots might help us. You've seen in various states, for instance, Arizona, one county wanted to count the ballots to make sure it matched what was in the machines. And you had I believe it was the then Attorney General, if I'm not mistaken, threatened to arrest the people in that county. I forget what, it may have been Cochise County. Forgive me, I don't know which county it was right now, but they wanted to make sure they made it valid that, yes, these are the proper results, in other words. But that wasn't good enough for, I guess, the then Attorney General in Arizona. Look what's happening in Arizona now. Now it's a purple state being run by moronic Democrats like Katie Hobbs. Anyways, this is the point, though. We need to have free and fair elections, so do a forensic audit of a county in a blue state where it's a blue city like Los Angeles or New York City. Go to Manhattan, get these machines, and do a forensic audit. They have the ability to do so. Prove definitively to the American people, these results are not it. This is not right. This candidate shouldn't have won. Now, they've been sworn into office, so they have to finish their term now, obviously. So I guess they get some, relief there. But moving forward, you should say, okay, this is what's going on, and you have fraudulent results. You have people representing you that shouldn't be representing you. In fact, it should be this person. It should have been this candidate. Oh, look what we found in LA County. You should have 3 more congressional leaders in your county. And people would say, geez, I'm kind of pissed off about that. Don't you think so? I voted for him. I voted for her, and they should have won. Now you got moron Gavin Newsom collapsing the Republican seat so he can get more Democrats in this push to, again, send more Democrats to D.C., as if we need more from California, God forbid. Ugh. Can you imagine having more Democrats from California coming into D.C.? It's bad enough they've swarmed the State House in Sacramento. My God. God forbid. More Democrats? That's what you need? So really, when you think about it, you have roughly about, at least I'd say, if I'm being generous with you, you have at least 40% of California that's voting Republican on any given presidential election cycle. Gavin Newsom has decided he only wants roughly 7 or 8 or 9%, whatever it may be, of that constituent to be represented in D.C. now. Gavin Newsom, who shouts at President Trump being a king, has decided your representation does not matter. This is a big problem, folks. And by the way, we see this all throughout these blue states. So when they accuse Texas of, which by the way is becoming maybe, I'd say it's more red, to be honest with you. When you look at it, the Republicans really have a stronghold in that state. Even despite Joe Biden opening up the borders and allowing illegal aliens to flood Texas, which is where they want. This is what they want too, by the way. They know they've won in California. They know they can't do anything unless, of course, we change the voting laws. Certainly that's the way you do it. And of course, you take the illegal aliens off the voter rolls and make it almost impossible for them to vote. But this is the step that needs to be taken. Trump needs to show definitively that, yes, indeed, there is cheating. Here it is, right in front of your eyes, using these machines with this software. We're not going to use it anymore. And that's it. That's the end of the story. That would get people pissed off. You do it in a couple counties, do it in blue counties. Hell, throw a red county in there too. I don't even care. But get this legislation passed. This would get even Democrats riled up about what's going on. So Alex Padilla, Adam Schiff, you want to stay in power? You better get to the you better get there and vote yes. That's all I really have to say to you on that. But this is a step in the right direction. This is how you change things in your country. That's how you save the republic. We're trying, I guess, not to do that as of right now. And I'm looking through here in ZeroHedge also, and it says here that DHS now issues a funding warning to states that do not purge their voter rolls. This should happen automatically. Every census year, they should just clean out the voter rolls in every single state. Say, you have, your voter roll is wiped out. You have a fresh slate. If you want to register to vote, you must go and do so. That's the way you've got to do it. And again, showing proof of citizenship, whatever it may be, a valid ID at your current residence, up to date. And that's how you do it. Every 10 years, boom, this is what you do. In every single state. You have people that have been dead for God knows how long, allegedly voting in certain races. Now, explain to me how that works. I'd love to hear it. But Mark Wayne Mullen is right about all this. We need to do this. States that do not purge their voter rolls should obviously lose funding. This is what it comes down to. Absolutely. Now, if we can do that, that would be great. They found in California, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Nevada alike, that they alone, DHS, found more than 250,000 non-citizens who were illegally on these voter rolls. Why? How did that happen? How could that happen if someone's doing their job in these states? It's a big problem, folks. And you might say, well, Gerace, Nevada, don't they have a Republican governor? But yeah, but the problem is you had a Democrat in before, and God knows what laws they allow to happen. Look at California, for God's sakes. California in 2015, under the great Kamala Harris as Attorney General, allowed over 1 million illegal aliens to have driver's license. Now, what can you do with that driver's license? You could vote. That's how you register to vote in California. So don't tell me there's no way possible that illegal aliens can vote. Or that, hey, it's against the law, therefore it doesn't happen. Give me a break. And by the way, that 278,000 illegal aliens caught on the voter rolls, that's that's the tip of the iceberg, if it's even there, of how many illegals vote. You have to understand something. When you have almost 100 million illegal aliens and expired visa holders alike staying here in this country, you cannot tell me there's only 250,000 people voting in these elections. Now, I'll grant it to you. That 250 spread across a couple of states can change some seats. Yeah, of course. And it can really change some elections. Sure, absolutely. But unless you do the audit, you cannot for sure determine that, yes, there was cheating. Yes, you have people that are voting that should not be voting. You can't tell me otherwise. So I'm happy that Mark Wayne Mullen is doing this. Absolutely, 100%. Again, I think the SAVE Act and removing the filibuster, though, is the wrong way. Even he went on to say that the Senate only has 49 votes the last time they even voted on the SAVE Act. So even if you did away with the filibuster, you still wouldn't even get it. You need 51. So John Thune's got to get to work, certainly in the Senate, and they've got to get the proper votes in place, folks. Obviously, if you get to 50, you can get J.D. Vance in there to vote for it, but we should be able to garner the support, folks. We really should. And anyone that doesn't want this, obviously, even Republicans that are doing this, you should look at them and say, why do you want that? What's going on in your state that you would not want that? Lisa Murkowski is one of these unfortunate people that have been saying they're not going to vote for it. We need people to vote for it. It should be 100 senators voting for this. Shouldn't be the other way around. And on that note, folks, I want to direct your attention over to the Middle East right now as we see the conflict escalating and flaring up again. Things are getting much, much worse, and I told you they would before they get better. Again, I hate being right, but this is the case right now. This comes from the AP, and it says here that Yemen's Iranian-backed Houthis say that they will block Saudi shipping at the Red Sea gateway. I told you this was going to get out of hand, folks, did I not? And why Saudi Arabia decided to go ahead and bomb Yemen just last week? I don't know what people are thinking. What is Mohammed bin Salman thinking right now? Now, they've had conflicts in the past, but why would you do this at a crucial time like this? Here's what's taking place right now. The Saudis have not used the Strait of Hormuz. They don't have to. They can use the east-west pipeline in their country. They can ship all their oil to the western side of the Arabian Peninsula to the port of Yanbu. Yanbu, they can fill up their tanks, their oil tankers, and ship them on their way. They can use the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Now, here's the problem. Because this conflict has gone on between them now and the striking inside their country, where they had the attack on the Sana'a International Airport, now what the Houthis are going to probably do is shut off the shipping now to all Saudi traffic. So now what are the Saudis going to do? They can go through the Suez Canal to the north. Sure, they can go through the Mediterranean. They can go around the entirety of Africa and then try to go to Asia that way. I mean, they could do that. This is going to take a lot more time and a lot more money to do so. This is going to put a big chokehold on Saudi oil. And by the way, the Saudis, I believe, now it says here in this article they can ship roughly 2.5 million barrels of oil per day, which is a very significant sum. I have some reports as well that say the daily exports for Saudi oil through Aramco could range anywhere between 6 and 8 million barrels of oil per day. I mean, this is depending on their production levels. It could have dropped to 2.5 since this war began because of, obviously, the logistics of them being attacked by the Iranians. But this is a big problem. So now you're talking about the Houthis shutting off the Bab el-Mandeb Strait to a major OPEC nation that are no longer probably going to be utilizing the oil markets. We do not need 2.5 million barrels less of oil on the market every single day. That is not going to work. This is not going to make things better, folks. Everything we have been doing, and if we're encouraging the Saudis to do so, this is bad. This is bad for business. I told you in my opening monologue, this is going to be an oil shock. And what that's going to do, this is all part of the big problem about this. You have about 31% of the global oil supply coming out of just the Persian Gulf. That's a lot of oil. 31, someone has said 34. I'm going with 31, okay? Even if it's 34, it's still terrible. It's worse, obviously. But now what you're doing, if, say, for instance, Kuwait tried to use Saudi's ports to ship their oil, which they could possibly do, or even these other Gulf Arab states on in the region, this is a big problem because now no one has access to. Right now, the Strait of Hormuz is shut down completely. I mean, it's very, very bad. But here's the problem now. This is happening. You got the Strait of Hormuz shut down, absolutely, certainly to any traffic coming out, going to America or Israel or what have you. Here's the problem. If oil stays above $100 per barrel for any extended period of time, and that will be the length of this war, we will enter what is called a demand destruction. That means you have a market, you have a commodity. They just completely, the demand just wipes out for it. So in other words, if we'll use England as an example. We'll use the UK. Let's say the UK just completely just doesn't get their oil imports. That means they just completely shut that market down. They don't even try to get it. This is going to cause a global recession, folks, and the oil market will collapse. And if that happens, we have major problems. Again, all ships are running on this. What are you going to do if you can't get oil in your country? Now, it's in about 145 other different products. That's another problem in and of itself. But if you cannot allow your nation to have oil, to supply automobiles, to supply tractors, to supply 18-wheelers, to supply X, Y, and Z, you're in a lot of trouble on the global market. So how are we going to get our goods to market if we don't have this commodity? We can't. Now, the U.S. is in a little bit of a different situation. We have the heavy crude oil coming in from Canada. We have it coming in from Mexico. We have it coming in from Venezuela to obviously a much smaller degree than what President Trump is alluding to. But we need to get that oil in. We're not getting that in. And now what we're doing is we're lowering our strategic petroleum reserves. President Trump said a month ago, in 4 weeks, we will have reached our limit. We will have reached the capacity at which we can utilize that emergency amount before we cut into what is necessary for our military supply. So that would be 270 million barrels of oil. And ladies and gentlemen, right now we are in a war with Iran. Are we going to continue to deplete that? What happens if a country decides to attack us? What happens if this war continues to prolong, which you'll find out very soon that it's likely to go on for several months? What do we do then? 70% of U.S. refineries for oil, they are set up to produce the sour heavy crude, which again comes only from Canada, Mexico, Venezuela, other countries, for instance, in the Persian Gulf. What happens if we don't get that supply in? What happens if Trump decides we're not going to pull any more out of the reserves? What do we do then? What happens then? Our economy collapses because you don't have any more diesel fuel. You don't have any more jet fuel. So are we just not going to fly? Are we not going to put any gas in our 18-wheelers, in our tractors for crop production? What do we do then? How is that going to work? See, nobody has thought this through, folks, and no one has told it to you like this. We're reaching a point where we don't have the right amount of fertilizer, the urea, the sulfur contents that come out of the Persian Gulf, of which we rely on. We're seeing farmers that aren't getting the right fertilizer. So not only do they not have the fertilizer, but now they're not even if they get it, they might not even have the diesel to run their tractors. What happens then? I don't even want to speculate what will happen then, but I can tell you, folks, it won't be any good. So this closing of the Bab el-Mandeb is drastic. A fourth of the global container traffic transits through this 20-mile small corridor. It's not going to be good, folks. It's not going to be good. And it's not going to be good for the Suez Canal traffic as well, who would go through if you have the Houthis that are threatening to stop you. And again, if they decide to really destroy these port cities in Saudi Arabia, that's going to create a whole nother level of chaos as well. So this is rough, folks. And by the way, this is coming out of CNBC today. We're seeing Brent crude now trading at $89, just over $89. We're seeing West Texas Intermediate today also rising, trading at $83 per barrel. Everything is going up. There were some talks earlier, for instance, that there may be some communication, for instance, that Iran and the United States may meet again. How many times are we going to keep hearing this? How long are investors going to buy this nonsense? There are no negotiations. There is no memorandum of understanding. This is going to be decided on the battlefield, as they say. But that doesn't stop the talking heads from talking and saying different things. For instance, we had Jack Keane today on Fox News, of course, saying just this. Take a listen.
What are we doing? We're doing what we couldn't get done diplomatically. We removed our blockade as part of the deal, but they maintained control. So now we're conducting the battle of the Straits of Hormuz to forcibly open the straits, secure it, and eventually control it. This is going to still take some time to be able to achieve that objective the president has given to his military commanders.
So now we're in a battle for the Strait of Hormuz, folks. Imagine that. On February 27th, the Strait of Hormuz was open. That region has always been open. It's never, ever been closed. And now we're in a battle to keep the strait open. Imagine that. That's what the world's all about now. What he said was incorrect too, by the way. And if you listen to my show before, you've heard me say this. It was not the Iranians that did not keep their end of the bargain. The United States came in. They decided to let a Qatari liquefied natural gas tanker, they tried to escort it through the Omani side. And the day prior, the Iranians made it very clear to all ships in the region, you will coordinate with us and you will transit through the Iranian side. That's the way this is going to work, should you want to get through. Now, they weren't charging tolls. They weren't attacking ships. And the United States, who under the Provision 5 of the memorandum, had no business telling ships to do anything, by the way. It was all supposed to be on the Iranians. The Iranians will make all the arrangements. Well, the arrangements were, you will contact us via the Persian Gulf Strait Authority. You'll fill out the form. You'll give it to us. And we will make sure that you get through. We'll tell you where to go. And you will transit on the Iranian side. You're not going to just do whatever you want. And by the way, I said to you, my listeners, I said, find me a ship that followed what the Iranians said, that transited how they asked them to. They never charged any fees. They never charged any tolls. But that listened to the Iranians that were attacked. Find me that ship. You can't do it. 3 ships that did that were listening to the United States. The United States had no business to do that. That's what escalated this. Now, whether the United States did this in order to restart the war, I would suggest, if I'm betting, I would say that's probably the reason of why they did that. We know J.D. Vance alluded to this. Well, we only signed the memorandum until we got our stockpiles where we wanted it to. Now, if that's the case, then we never had any faith in keeping up with that. It's us that violated it. It's not the Iranians. Now, Jack Keane is going to tell you otherwise. The Iranians decided to attack ships. Well, he left out the part where we were escorting ships through the Omani side, which they forbid. And by the way, it was us that decided to attack them, not the other way around. They didn't start attacking U.S. bases until after we attacked them. So let's get the facts in order. Right, folks? The facts are facts. I don't make them up. I just follow them. That's what happened. We restarted this war. It wasn't the Iranians. And by the way, we fell through on every other commitment in that. We never gave them the frozen assets, for instance. That never happened. We never gave them the money for their own reconstruction. That never happened. We didn't stop the war in Lebanon. That's still going on. So what the hell are we talking about that the Iranians decided not to follow through? They did. We got to call it as it is, folks, and that's exactly what took place. I want to play you our wonderful Secretary of State, who, by the way, has not been involved in any of these negotiations, which I find really interesting, too. I think you probably do as well. Anyways, here is Marco Rubio talking about making a deal with the Iranians.
I think we're always open to diplomacy. It has to be real. It has to be a deal that they're willing to live by. Look, Iran a week ago was supposed to put out a statement saying that the Straits of Hormuz would be open, that they would no longer attack shipping. And instead of doing that, they attacked 3 ships. I think that was last Friday or Saturday. So, I mean, their behavior has to change in order for ours to change.
Their behavior has to change? We're the ones that came in and allowed that to happen. It's unbelievable how they get away with these lies. It really is, folks. It was not the Iranians. It was the United States. Now we got oil prices rising. If it stays over 100, folks, and by the way, if it gets to 150 or beyond that, we're going to see a recession like we have not seen in quite some time, ladies and gentlemen. And I always tell you, make sure you're staying prepped on everything you desperately need, whether it be food or water or fuel or whatever, medicine, anything you need. You need to make sure you have that and you store up on that right now because things are not looking good. And by the way, I found this other piece of information from Edward Dowd. And he said that the longer this war goes on, he said the faster these risks of which he mentioned, one was China, one was our AI bubble, the other was our housing bubble. Who's been talking to you about that for the last couple months? Oh, right, that would be me. I'm glad to hear Edward Dowd, who's a brilliant in finances, by the way, say all that. But he said all these factors, all these three things escalate along with the oil shock itself as long as this war goes on. And what we're seeing now is the CPI inflation will reach roughly 8 to 11% sometime around August, September, October. And that'll be the indicator that we're in the red. So that is going to likely happen, folks, so long as this war goes on. Unless some miracle happens and we stop it, which I hope happens. Oh, by the way, I'm going to read this to you as well. This is really interesting. One thing he said that I didn't know about. He said that the real economy has been struggling inside the U.S. for quite some time. He said non-farm payrolls were anywhere between 8 and 4 standard deviations off in 2024 and 2025. Wow. So that means our job numbers are cooked, in other words. And that means our economy is not expanding as it ought to be, folks. That means our GDP is much, much lower in terms of what is actually happening. So we'll keep an eye on the oil, folks. Again, I'm looking at it right now. It is going up. It's going up, folks. And this is not going to slow down anytime soon, unfortunately. All right, folks, I do want to move on to some topics inside the United States that I want you to be aware of. So buckle up and take note of what I'm going to tell you right now. This comes from Time Magazine. This one I heard on Friday after the show, and I said, my audience would love this. My audience will get a real kick out of this one. This is great. Well, we're all struggling. The Trump media is to sell traders the fastest access to Truth Social posts. Now you're asking yourself, who cares? We get all that from President Trump, folks. Not so fast. Not so fast. From announcements of the U.S. military action to threats of tariffs on other nations, President Trump is going to sell on his Truth Social this information, which has been a repository of market-moving statements, mostly from him, since his social media site launched in 2022. Now the president is courting more controversy by selling access to some of these posts in milliseconds. So in other words, you'll get the information, you'll be privy to it before the entire world, and you'll be able to make bets on Polymarket, of which his son Don Jr. sits on the board of. Isn't that nice? So if you've got the money, you got the dough to, I guess, spend, ladies and gentlemen, in a time like right now, you'll be able to get some real good information. You'll be able to make bets ahead of time before it happens. Isn't that nice? Selling well, really, it's government policy in order to make a buck off people. A company spokesperson told Reuters the paid-for licensed data service will deliver posts from Truth Social's 10 most influential accounts, obviously President Trump would be one of them, to customers significantly faster than the usual push notification. President Trump has 12.9 million followers on his Truth Social account, and his platform is the highest profile user. The accounts of his sons, Don Jr. and Eric, and the White House similarly have millions of followers. It says, while the company has not publicly disclosed details about the service, including the cost and the exact posting that will take place, its revenues stand to benefit the Trump family, with President Trump himself owning about 41% of the publicly traded Trump media through a trust. Oh, it's great, folks. Isn't this great? Isn't this great, the world we live in right now? You're struggling to make ends meet. We have our economy going upside. We have oil now that's going to go up. That means gas prices will resume. That means food costs go up. That means energy costs go up. That means products at the market where you buy it, groceries and what have you, they're all going to go up. It has to. And God forbid it just completely shuts down and we don't have diesel at all. We don't have anything. But don't worry, Donald Trump will make money off his Truth Social post to make a buck. I would have never, in my life, if you told me this in 2024, I would tell you were crazy. I would say Trump never did anything like this in his first term. We didn't see anything like this. We saw a growing economy. We saw a booming economy. We saw the restoration of our military. We weren't getting in wars. President Trump worked to stop wars. I would have never believed any of this. So this 180 that we find ourselves in, where Trump now is making money off of Truth Social posts, and his family is making money off this, and people close to him are making money off this, this is completely unbecoming of any U.S. president, certainly President Trump. We've seen this with the Bidens and what they did, sending Hunter Biden to Ukraine and Russia and China alike, among other nations, to collect money for Joe Biden as his bagman. But this is something, this is just something that's just dirty. I think everyone would agree with me on that. That's dirty, folks. If you're selling information so people can bet on it ahead of time, before other people can, and before it actually happens, yeah, this is really, really bad. We've seen this with other members of his administration, too. People working in the administration get kickbacks if people influence certain people in the administration and they get the legislation passed. I mean, this is just a bad look, folks. And especially in a time like right now, when, again, as I said to you before, it's tough for many people. People are struggling to make ends meet. We're seeing this in our credit sector. Our private credit has reached $2.5 to $3 trillion, having withdrawals due to bankruptcy. I mean, this is all taking place right now inside the United States. This is the indicator that things are going south. And one of the other things that Edward Dowd did say, too, when I listened to him speak, he said this means that people are not buying other things. They're focused on one of the commodities. So in other words, if oil's up, they're spending more money on gas. They're not buying other things. This is an indicator the economy is not doing well. And corporate profiteering, I guess, is the way that Trump is moving forward. I don't know how he does this. I really don't know why he would do this, but he's enriching himself and his family. And there's no other way I could say that to you, so I just wanted to share this with you. And it gives people more reason not to go out and vote in the midterm. I mean, again, would you do this if Joe Biden was doing this? If he ran Truth Social and he's giving information to his family, and Hunter Biden was sitting on the board of something like Polymarket, and they're all making money off it amidst a war in which we shouldn't be involved in. I mean, again, folks, we would all be up in arms about this, and rightfully so. So nothing changes because it's President Trump. Now, there's other allegations of insider trading that have proliferated under the second Trump administration. Trump's businesses and his earnings have also raised questions about potential conflicts of interest, including most recently his more than $1.4 billion in earnings from his family's cryptocurrency ventures in 2025. Yeah, folks, I guess the swamp is alive and well. I guess that's the only thing I can really tell you about all of this. Again, I got to be honest with you, folks. I would have never guessed it. But this is the reality we're in now. All right. I wish I had more positive news, folks. I just don't. This comes from Just the News. It says here, as the Democratic-Socialist of America, who are communist, I added that part in there, gain power across New York City, critics are now voicing concern over education policies increasingly reminiscent of communism. Well, why would they be shocked? The whole city's communist. I mean, it's not a shock. A major concern is that the DSA's rejection of limited government and competition in favor of expanding free public education funded by taxes, targeting the wealthy while blocking privatization through charter schools and vouchers. We see this too out in California. I saw this firsthand. I taught a charter school at one point, and let me tell you something, the state, the Democrats in Sacramento and in the county itself hate charter schools. They hate the voucher system, and they don't want it. They just don't like it, and they will do everything they can to destroy it. But it says here that the DSA-backed policies focused on expanding government programs, providing more resources without creating the conditions that encourage better outcomes. Well, no kidding. They don't want outcomes. That's not what public education is anymore. And I know because I was in it, public education is about putting out activism. It's about putting out misinformation. It's about getting you to think how they want you to think, not how to think. Notice on my show, I never tell you what to think. I tell you what's happening. I tell you my opinion on it, of course. But I never tell you what to think. I never tell you must think this way about the election or about this war. I give you the facts. And the facts are pretty damning, I would have to say. But despite the spending among the, again, the highest amounts in the country per student, New York City spends roughly $42,000 on each public school student. I think they're getting jacked on their money, to be honest with you. My God in heaven. What are they producing other than nonsense? What are they producing in New York City? I mean, again, New York Public City Schools, again, has resulted in the highly, again, costly hiring spree. Despite critics saying that these measures don't do anything meaningful for improving academia. Certainly not thinking. My God. Again. Oh, geez. Again, I'll say it to you this way. Anybody with money is not putting their kid in the private school system in New York City or in LA for that matter. Our two biggest public school systems. Yeah, in the face of all this, this information of the massive education spending and probably questionable results, I would have to say. New York City Mayor Mum Dummy, and he is a Democratic-Socialist member, folks. He is indeed a communist. Recently announced for an expansion to free public childcare and education for children as young as 2 and 3 years old to be launched later this year. Now, why does he want to do that? Why would a mum dummy want to do this? Well, the reason is, of course, the sooner you get them in the public school system, the sooner you can indoctrinate them. That's the whole purpose about all this. That's what the whole meaning of the women's rights movement was too, by the way. Get the mother working, get the kids in school at a younger age. It's easier to indoctrinate them. Less learning, less critical thinking skills, less problem solving, less logic. They don't want that. Why would they want that? Why would they want you to think for yourself when they can control what you think and shame you when you question otherwise? Well, again, that's why you listen to my show. Thank God. Yep, folks, this is universal universal public education. They're all garbage anyway. That's why I intertwine the two sometimes. 90% of studies show that public schools that experience competition tend to organically improve as a result. That's why they don't want to do away with. That's why they want to do away with the vouchers and the charter school system. They don't want it. They don't want competition. They want obedient people sitting in the seats, voting how they want you to vote. Vote for the communists. Vote for the schmucks on the city council, where things never ever get any better at all. That's New York City in a nutshell. They ought to be ashamed of themselves. Oh, by the way, before we end today's program, we have about a minute remaining. This comes from the New American. It says, Second Circuit upholds New York City vaccine mandate against the Amish. I guess we don't like the Fourth Amendment in New York as well, along with other parts of the country. It says here, a federal appeals court has reaffirmed New York's strict school vaccination requirements, dealing a setback to Amish families seeking religious exemptions. In the case Miller v. McDonald, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit ruled that the state's elimination of religious exemptions does not violate the First Amendment's protected rights of Amish parents and private schools. The decision imposes significant fines for any noncompliance. So in other words, if you don't inject your kid with toxic sludge, or just in general, don't want to do that, I would encourage everybody to, before you give your child a vaccine, to look at all of the ingredients or the adjuvants inside of the vaccine and ask yourself a big question. Is this something I would want to put in my child? And what are the side effects of putting all this toxic sludge in my children? And then I would ask myself the other question, why are Amish children still 1 in 10,000 of risking themselves of getting autism or being on the autism spectrum? Does anyone want to try to answer that for me? I think you'll find it very, very interesting when you do. Yeah. Let's hope this gets overturned, folks, and challenged. I would imagine the Amish would take their kids out of school if that were the case. That's all the time I have for you on the show today, folks. I got to run. Thank you for being here today. Make sure you're always staying prepped with your essentials in the times we face of uncertainty. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Until then, be good. Stay busy. God bless.